I don't know if you ever noticed this, but a lot of new Commander players are completely miserable playing the game. And I'm not just talking about people that aren't outwardly expressive. I care a lot about the other players at my table having a good time. And so when I notice someone seemingly not enjoying themselves, I go talk to them about it. How exactly those conversations go varies a lot, but the through line I noticed is twofold. Yes, they are struggling to have fun, mostly because they often feel like they aren't doing things right. But also, they still show up every week and continue playing, because despite their lack of understanding why, there's a positive impact to be felt from playing Commander. I myself went through this exact process. When I first started playing, I genuinely didn't enjoy the game, but I instinctively realized that the social interaction it provided me healed a part of my brain. That may sound dramatic, but I genuinely believe that to be an accurate description. People are inherently social. We need social interaction in the same way we need food and water. This may seem a little bit besides the point, but I always preach that if someone wants to get a cat, they should really get at least two, because they also are social animals and they need somebody to spend time with. And then I went and locked myself into a room to work, alone. For years, I wasn't even properly aware of my own isolation before I left it. That's why Commander was so crucially important to me. It gave me an easy way to spend time and interact with other people, and ultimately make friends and develop a social life. I often read online that new players should start with other formats before playing Commander, and I think that's an obvious but narrow-minded way to look at the experience that Commander provides. Yes, 1 versus 1 Magic is also a social space, but it's often much more structurally focused on the game rather than the sociability of it. Starting Magic through Commander is complexer gameplay-wise, but also a straighter gateway into an accessible social space. If I had been given and followed the advice to start with 1 versus 1 Magic, I would have quit the game very early on. And that's because 1 versus 1 only rarely gets me the experience I'm looking for. Games, Magic included, are often misunderstood to be only about the actual gameplay itself. A long time ago, Mark Rosewater published a blog about Timmy, Johnny and Spike, the 3 psychographic profiles of Magic the Gathering. Timmy, Johnny and Spike are very famous by now. I'm sure you've heard of them. Here's a brief overview anyways, and I promise I have a point beyond just talking about the old profiles. They each have a different way of enjoying the game. To quote, Timmy likes to win big. He doesn't want to eke out last-minute victory. Timmy wants to smash his opponents. He likes his cards to be impressive and he enjoys playing big creatures and big spells. Timmy is motivated by fun. He plays Magic because it's enjoyable. Timmy is very social. An important part of the game is sitting around with his friends. Johnny is the creative gamer, to whom Magic is a form of self-expression. Johnny likes to win, but he wants to win with style. It's very important to Johnny that he win on his own terms. As such, it's important to Johnny that he's using his own deck. Johnny cares more about the quality of his wins than the quantity. For example, let's say Johnny builds a new deck that has a neat but difficult way to win. He plays 10 games and manages to get his deck to do its thing once. Johnny walks away happy. Spike is the competitive player. Spike plays to win. Spike enjoys winning. To accomplish this, Spike will play whatever the best deck is. Spike will copy decks off the internet. Spike will borrow other players' decks. To Spike, the thrill of Magic is the adrenaline rush of the competition. Spike enjoys the stimulation of outplaying the opponents and the glory of victory. Spike cares more about the quantity of wins than the quality. For example, Spike plays 10 games and wins 9 of them. If Spike feels he should have won the 10th, he walks away unhappy. At this point, I would like to point out how much these profiles focus on interacting with the systems of the game. Over the years, this understanding of Timmy, Johnny and Spike became ingrained into the culture of Magic. But it also became clear that it wasn't really complete. And so, Vorthos was coined. To quote Matt Cavotta, Vorthos is the guy who starts collecting cards because he liked the art, then read some magic novels, then saw his favorite characters appear on some cards and decided to learn to play. There are a lot of Vorthoses out there. Some collect cards but might not even play. Some have a hoot getting artists to sign their cards. Some don't read flavor text till after they finish the novel in case it might spoil the ending. Vorthos understands that magic can be fun even when you're not playing the game. However, in 2007, Mark Rosewater wrote a blog where he disagreed on Vorthos being its own profile, and rather called it an extension of the existing ones. He described it as, Vorthos is not a separation from Timmy, Johnny and Spike. It's a layer that can be added on top of any of the three psychographics. There's not a plain Vorthos. There are Vorthos Timmys, Vorthos Johnnies and Vorthos Spikes. Although I do believe Vorthos Timmy is the largest contingent. Vorthos is a segment of the audience that derives their satisfaction from a particular aspect of the game. In that same article, he also discussed the idea of Mel, a player similar to Vorthos but that focuses their appreciation on the game design of Magic. Still, to him both Mel and Vorthos were just a spectrum of Timmy, Johnny and Spike. But they also introduced a new angle from which to view Magic, one less focused on just gameplay, and that then manifested strongly in the most recent iteration of Timmy, Johnny and Spike, released at the end of May 2025. This article completely reframed the three psychographic profiles, moving them away from gameplay and instead towards larger scale experiences. Oh, and somewhere along the ways, the profiles were given alternative names to be more inclusive. Timmy and Tammy were now described as players that focus on visceral opportunity. Quoting again, visceral opportunity is the ability to experience something that is hard or impossible to experience in everyday life. Mark then divides this into 4 categories. Things that are impossible to do, like throwing a fireball. Things that are risky to do, like doing a dangerous stunt. Things you don't feel comfortable doing in real life, like exhibiting aggressive behavior. And finally, things that you can do, but become easier when done through a game, like social interaction. Timmy and Tammy are no longer primarily understood as wanting to play big creatures, but rather as players that want to experience things that they normally couldn't or would struggle with. Quoting, maybe that's a big, powerful creature or spell that will be exciting to resolve. Maybe it's an effect that's chaotic and unpredictable. Maybe it pulls them into a setting and lets them explore something new. Maybe it allows them to connect with others in the game to create an interaction that they will get to tell stories about. You may notice that both Vorthos and Mel have been merged into this. This will stay true for Johnny and Jenny as well. Johnny and Jenny are still about self-expression, but are no longer limited to cool combos and interesting gameplay interactions. Quoting, colors, card types, subtypes, names, art, and more can all be used to express your identity. Sometimes even the absence of something, such as creatures, can be a form of expression. Another way to express yourself in games is your demeanor. A big part of Magic, especially in tabletop play, is interacting with your opponents. Choosing to have a very distinctive style of interaction can be another form of self-expression. My example here was a friend who liked to show no emotion. No matter what deck or format they were playing, they were always stoic, never talking, never even cracking a smile. Your accessories can also express your identity. There are many other components to playing a game of Magic, like card sleeves, deck boxes, tokens, and counters. Part of expressing yourself can involve everything else that's part of the game. For instance, I had a friend who always used 3-dimensional tokens. He would use miniature toys to represent his tokens. If he could flavorfully match what they were, he would. If he couldn't, they would be dinosaurs. Johnny and Jenny too have been given a much broader range of understanding that includes not just Magic itself, but everything surrounding it. Spike is still just Spike. They still want to win, but we now know that that isn't so much about winning itself, but rather about learning. It's about being challenged and improving your skills. I've said this before, but I don't like using the word fun to describe games because it's not very good at actually describing the lived or desired experience. Games like Dota 2 or League of Legends aren't fun. They definitely aren't fun. But that doesn't mean they're not a worthwhile experience. As Maro described, competitive games are usually primarily about learning, and that act of learning can be very satisfying, even though I wouldn't necessarily describe that as fun in the moment. My point here is really one about being precise in how we use our language, because that can help us understand what we ourselves enjoy about the games we play. This isn't easy. If you remember, about 1600 words ago, I described how newer Commander players often feel like they are not playing the game right. This is because they don't know what kind of experience they are looking for. They are unable to comprehend their own internal understanding of enjoyment. The problem here is that Magic is a game so massive, so all-encompassing, that finding good words to describe as much of it as possible is a process that has taken Mark Rosewater 19 years. But this lack of understanding is why it can be so difficult to have fun playing Commander. Conversations about enjoyable Commander games often revolve around deck power levels and finding the right people for the right pod. And that makes sense. It's not terrible advice. But I think it misses a crucial first step, which is identifying what kind of experience you are looking for and enjoy. If you don't know that, then you're really just blindly guessing your way through games, essentially using people as dice to roll, hoping to get lucky. While the odds really aren't that bad, I think going about it that way is doing a disservice to yourself, because it's taking a very powerful option out of your toolbox that I think isn't talked about anywhere as often as it should be: shaping your environment to better suit your desired experience. If you know how you want to experience Magic, then you can just tell other people, and there's a good chance they'll make an effort to accommodate you. Anybody who's played with me knows that if you play a card I don't think is appropriate for our game, I'll just tell you. And I've seen plenty of people adjust their decks because of that feedback. Although, if you do that, make sure to be nice and also provide positive feedback about people's decks, otherwise you're just a source of negativity, which isn't great. Earlier, we talked about Timmy, Johnny and Spike. I wanted to show you how difficult it can be to identify why we like the games we like, and also hopefully give you some lenses that can help you figure out what it is exactly that you enjoy about it. I really recommend reading Mark Rosewater's recent article. I'll link it in the description. For me personally, Commander is really all about social interaction. This means I enjoy longer games, rather than ones where I constantly need to worry about a game-ending combo. A funny moment we all have a laugh at is much more valuable to me than a complex and well-executed stack. To me, that also means that I decenter winning as the goal of my experience. I try to win, of course, but it's not why I'm here. I also love the expressiveness of Commander. Seeing what everybody brings to the table is always super interesting. I think it reveals a lot about the person I'm playing with, and that eases the social interaction that is so important to me. That is also why I will always prefer a deck with lots of interesting, neat interactions over one that is just filled with good cards. It's very difficult to know a lot about yourself. Oddly, it's often the last place we look for answers. If you find yourself struggling with actively enjoying Commander, then I recommend trying to really vocalize the experience you're looking for. Try to put it into a sentence, and don't feel restricted to only game mechanics. There's so much more to Magic than just the text written on the cards. Once you have that information, I think you'll find it much easier to build decks and play in a way that meets your expectations. And while you're at it, let me know about it. I would really love to hear what, specifically, makes Commander fun for you. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, would definitely appreciate that. When I do these kind of like one continuous thought essays, I don't like interrupting them with a call to action. So I would really appreciate it if you could give the video a thumbs up. That would go a long way. And also, don't forget to check out my Patreon. There's a link down in the description where you can support me directly. That would also be fantastic. Anyways, I just kind of wanted to talk about this because I think it's a really interesting subject matter. As I said, the article that Mark Rosewater wrote in May is in the description. I really recommend it. I think it's actually fantastic. And also, I think it's really interesting how it changed. Like the current iteration of the psychographic player profiles that we have for Magic is very, very different from the original from many years ago. And there's a lot of value to understanding that and reading that, I think. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys soon. Goodbye.